Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will talk a little bit about the different ways that you can travel from Munich to Prague. We will also tell you a little bit about our experience on the Zapadni Express train that travels from Munich to Prague daily. Things were extremely stressful on our trip on this train, so make sure you don't miss it. For travelers to southern Germany, the city of Prague is definitely within reach as an additional stop on your vacation or just for a weekend getaway. There are really only two cost-effective methods for getting to Prague from Munich, which are, not surprisingly, by bus or by rail. Of course, you can fly into Prague from Munich, but the cost will definitely be more than you would pay by bus or rail. And of course, this doesn't include any baggage either. The Zapadni Express is the train that travels directly between Munich and Prague. This train departs every 2 hours daily, presenting travelers with 7 opportunities each day to travel between Munich and Prague in relative comfort at an affordable price. The route takes this train north from Munich through Regensburg before switching directions in Schwandorf. From there, it crosses the border at Fürth and into the Czech Republic. Further stops occur at Domažlice and Pilsen before finally arriving in Prague about 5.5 hours after departing. This train offers 2 classes of travel, being first and second class. For most travelers, the second class seats will do just fine. Those are the seats that we traveled on. They were very comfortable, with ample legroom, a footrest, a tray table, and even power outlets. There are also second class compartment cars that can be booked at an extra cost. Second class tickets for this train can be booked as low as €42 per person one way for the Prague Special offering. There have also been reports on other websites of tickets costing only €15 per person, but we have not been able to find any of these actual tickets. A first class ticket will cost you much more, around €120 per person. If you don't feel like taking the train, you can also take the bus. There are several bus services that operate between Munich and Prague. The route is much more direct than the train, with generally no stops made between the starting and ending points of the journey. Because of this, the journey also lasts about an hour less than for the train, resulting in only about 4.5 hours of travel. The ride is also generally cheaper than the train. For example, a RegioJet bus costs around €40 for a return trip. Flixbus, another company taking people between Munich and Prague, costs about €50 for a round trip. While it's a shorter ride, you may lose some of the creature comforts that you have with the larger seats, better legroom, and tray tables in the train. When we visited Prague this year, we took the Zapadni Express, believing it to be the best way to get to Prague from Munich. It seemed fast, efficient, and a great way to travel at the time. The tickets were also relatively cheap, and we thought it was a good value for money based on other reviews we read. However, our experience turned sour right from the start. It should be said that if you book this train, you should get a seat reservation. If you're not familiar with routes in Europe, many trains offer seat reservations in addition to a regular ticket price. This means that you're able to buy a ticket to get on the train, but if you don't get a seat reservation, you might not be guaranteed a place to sit. Some trains require seat reservations, and others, like the Zapadni Express, offer them as an optional addition to your fare. For an extra €3 per person per seat, you can guarantee yourself a designated spot on the train. We did this for our journey because we knew that it would be a very, very busy train. We were randomly assigned to car 259. However, when we arrived at the station in Munich, car 259 was missing. We were worried because we didn't want to have to stand for the entire 5.5 hour journey waiting for a seat to free up. After asking one of the Czech train officers, he just pointed to the front of the train and said to go into that car and take a seat. So we sat at our numbered seats in a different car and sat there praying nobody would come to claim them. Europeans are generally not at all shy about kicking you out of their reserved seat. We waited for the first few station stops before we finally got comfortable and started unpacking our things for the journey. Luckily, nobody came to claim our seats. However, it would have been nice to receive a notification that our seats changed and that the train car was no longer being serviced. We received nothing, but this was only the beginning of our issues. During the entire duration of our train ride, there were absolutely no announcements. There were no station stop announcements, no welcome aboard, no updates on the journey, nothing. This made things confusing when the electronic sign in the front of our train car went from reading München to Praha, or Munich to Prague, to München to Pilsen.
Okay, so this train is very confusing. I mean, first of all, it's packed. There's like 20, 30 people standing just in the aisle because they can't get seats, and more people keep getting on at every stop. And then they changed the sign, which used to read that it's going to Prague, but now it's going to Pilsen, but the announcements keep saying Prague. So hopefully we are going to Prague. And then a message came on about 20 minutes ago that said now there's going to be a bus replacement service between one of the stations and Pilsen. So we just don't know what's going on. Hopefully we end up in the right place.
We knew that Pilsen was a station stop, but it shouldn't have been the end of our journey. Others in our car expressed the same concerns, and we asked several people whether the line was going to end in Pilsen, which was nearly 2 hours away from Prague still. Again, no announcements. Sometimes when there are major repairs on train lines or issues with the train, buses will be hired to take passengers from one station to another. With the Domuslice stop coming up fast, there was nothing but confusion in our train car. When we finally got to Domuslice, people started to move around uncomfortably. Should we get off? Should we stay on? There was only one member of staff on the entire train and nobody knew where she was. Again, no announcements. We didn't see a bus anywhere, and the stop looked to be in the middle of nowhere. Eventually, without any word from anyone, the train started to pull away again towards Prague.
So the confusion continues. We just stopped at the stop where we were supposed to get off for the bus. The sign still said get off for the bus, but people just stayed on. Nobody knew what was going on. There was no announcement or anything. And so now we're still heading towards Prague. So we'll see where we end up. But we're with a lot of people that are in the same boat as us.
Yeah,
so.
A lot of people looked confused.
Yeah, so we're still confused. All right, we know we're in the right spot now. So finally, our reservation showed up above our seats, just with just an hour and a half left in a 5.5 hour journey. So
our return trip from Prague was not without any stressors either. We knew to expect a busy train, but boy oh boy, it turned out to be much worse than that. We received a notification from Deutsche Bahn, who we booked our tickets through, that there would be border checks on the way back to Germany. With the Ukraine conflict going on, there was an increasing number of refugees entering the country illegally from Eastern Europe, so the authorities had to create border checks for all trains entering the country. We were told to expect minor delays, so that wasn't much of a problem for us. We knew that the train would just continue on to Munich after the checks. We were already about an hour late when we arrived at the border check at Fürth, the first train station on the German side of the border. The police came on and checked everyone's passports and residence permits, which went off without a hitch. However, after the border check, we received the very first announcement during our entire journey. The conductor told us in no uncertain terms that this service was now ending in Schwandorf. But that couldn't be right. Schwandorf was still 2 hours away from Munich. We asked around our train car and got mixed responses. Some passengers still thought we were going to Munich. Others seemed to think it was going to end in Schwandorf. The conductor came on again and clarified that the service was ending in Schwandorf, and that we would have to use local transportation and other trains to return to Munich. The Zapadni Express completely wiped their hands of us and offered us no alternatives. Not only that, but the conductor said we would arrive in Schwandorf at 4:59 p.m., and the only train going to Regensburg for the next hour, where we could then connect to Munich, was leaving 2 minutes later, and it would not wait for us. The last message we heard from the conductor was a rather sarcastic, "Blame the police," instead of what he should have said, "We are sorry for the inconvenience." When we arrived in Schwandorf with only seconds to spare, 5 carriages worth of passengers ran off the train from Prague and started pushing their ways, backpacks, bags, and all, into the small 2-car regional train that would take us to Regensburg. We managed to climb up into the train with our suitcases in tow and helped pull others onto the train as well. It felt like a scene out of the Titanic when officers and passengers were helping each other onto lifeboats. The regional train driver started yelling, "Keep the doors free," and started closing them on the people left on the platform. Overall, only about 1/3 of the passengers from the Zapadni Express made it onto the regional train. The rest would have to wait over an hour for the next one. When we arrived at Regensburg, the chaos continued. The platform for the only train going to Munich in the next half hour was packed with normal commuters as well as 1/3 of the Zapadni Express passengers. When the train pulled into the station, the driver was visibly entertained, knowing that there was no way we would all fit on the train. We packed in like sardines. People stood in the doorways, in the aisles, sat on the floor, laid on the stairs, and found just about any nook or cranny they could to get some reprieve from standing. In the end, we arrived to Munich about an hour and a half late. What makes this fact even more upsetting is knowing that the earliest that the remaining passengers could have arrived back in Munich was over an hour later than that. While the Zapadni Express could definitely be more comfortable than the bus, there are glaring operational issues at hand, and we just can't overlook those. There's a lack of communication with the passengers, the train itself is woefully understaffed, and the trains are overbooked. There seems to be a genuine disregard for safety and getting passengers to their destinations by these lines. So I guess what we're trying to say is that you should save yourself some money, some time, and many headaches. Take the bus.